This morning, I had prepared a homily for you, just for you. It's pretty good, maybe B+, somewhere around there. Of course, if you were here 3 years ago, it was prepared especially for you then, too. You would never have known. But last night, when I glanced at the second reading, I began to think about it a little bit more. And then when I was working out this morning, I thought of it more and more. Now, don't let your minds go to that great workout video or my tights. This is church, after all. So I offer you these thoughts, unpolished as they are, on the second reading, in particular, along with the gospel. I don't know about you, but I'm noticing as we begin to emerge from the stay-at-home order and somewhat from this experience of the virus, that people are beginning to reflect on their time at home. I suspect it'll be something like reflecting on that great flood of '59 or whatever it was, or the great snow of Christmas Eve 2009. Pretty sure it was that night. I got stuck twice that night. It'll be the great virus of 2020. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing people begin to reflect on their time. The image that's come to my mind has been like a severe thunderstorm or a tornado. What do? Well, you look for protection. You huddle somewhere safe. Now, there are some who doubt the weatherman. At times, the weatherman is wrong, and they go about their business. And there are some who believe there's a tornado and just have to go outside to look at the tornado. I think there have been some of those. But many of us have huddled in our homes for safety. And then afterwards, as we often see on TV, on the news, after a storm, a tornado, people emerge and begin to speak about their experience of it. Perhaps this experience will help those on the coasts to understand what they see of those in the Midwest emerging from storms. Experiences, reflecting on them. Made me laugh just yesterday. I opened up a card from a woman who wished me well and said, I think I've been enjoying this social distancing a little bit too much. I've heard most especially from moms, probably this past week or two, on one occasion or another, reflecting on their experience. Now, maybe it's not universal, but all the moms that I experienced, one that has kids at home, talked about the difficulty of homeschooling, getting adjusted to that and their increased appreciation of teachers. But all these moms talked about how much they value having their kids at home, how much they value being around their family more often, and how they've enjoyed a change of pace. The busyness of life has had to have been set aside in some respects. They're not taking their kids from here to there for this activity or the next. And they've expressed appreciation for that and hope that maybe some modified schedule can be had when things begin to open up. I, too, have appreciated a little bit more of a relaxed schedule, or maybe just having some leisure time, maybe to work outside. But the moms consistently shared that experience with me. Gives me a chance to say Happy Mother's Day to all you moms. Bless you, dear moms. The image of a mother, I might submit to you this morning, is a helpful image for understanding this second reading, in particular, the holy priesthood, the royal priesthood that Peter spoke of, the priesthood of the baptized. I'll never forget this Polish Dominican priest speaking about the Eucharist, used the image of a mother, saying, look what she does. Look, here is my body. Take, eat, to her child, even in the womb and as she breastfeeds. I thought it was a compelling image for the Eucharist, which doesn't end when breastfeeding does, but the mother gives herself emotionally, physically, mentally, morally, spiritually, for the life of her child. It's a compelling image, I find, for the Eucharist, but also for the royal priesthood, offering up spiritual sacrifices for the good of others. Offering up spiritual sacrifices is the sacrifice of one's own life, making an offering with one's own life. This, as I understand it, was the intent, the purpose of Jesus cleansing the temple. He was not just getting at bad practices, overcharging people, but he was overturning the very means necessary to conduct the sacrifices integral to temple worship. He was suggesting the change that was coming by overthrowing, doing away with what was needed for those sacrifices, speaking of his own self as a sacrifice. And those who would join him in worship would worship in spirit and truth. The offering no more can be purchased except through the offering of your life. There's the act of the royal priesthood. It's imaged very well in good mothers who offer spiritual sacrifices, the sacrifice of their own life. You know, one of the hard things for me, coming to the end of this, there'll be many things that I appreciate, many things that I appreciate, but one of the hard things for me will be returning to the way of offering Mass, which we had been familiar with, most of us all our lives, as priests facing the people. It'll be hard for me to return at one level after having tasted deeply the inner truth that I knew intellectually, but now experientially. It's a truth that corresponds to the act of the first Christians, the way that they worshiped, which corresponds to the way in which the Last Supper was conducted, which is captured in masterpieces that you see painted. Jesus and all the apostles on one side of the table, which is precisely how they ate their meals then. It's a truth that is integrated into every moment of a person's spiritual life in the Catholic Church, from the very beginning to the very end. The very beginning is captured very well in the Church of St. John Lateran. There are others, but St. John Lateran, that's the Pope's church. It's his cathedral, like St. Peter's in Kansas City, Kansas, is Archbishop Snowman's cathedral as the Bishop of Rome. Pope Francis's church is St. John Lateran. It's constructed with a baptistry that is connected to the church, but somewhat distant from it. It's a separated structure, octagonal in shape, enormous, into which you enter from the west with your back to the darkness that you're leading. You can see even to this day the instructions that the Christians had. You enter into the baptismal font, which is octagonal, for the 8th day, the day of the resurrection, with your back turned towards the darkness, which symbolizes the devil, and your face facing the east, the rising sun, and in there you can see the altar, right? You're pointed towards the altar. From baptism all the way to the grave, if you think about it. Funeral homes, funeral directors Ours here, in particular, are very particular about getting the placement of the body correct, always with the face of the person facing east. Foot first, head last, which is how we're buried in Catholic cemeteries, always. Feet that way, first, so that when the sun arises on that great day of the resurrection, and Jesus fulfills what he promised in this gospel, I will come back to you after I have prepared a place for you. The Christian from the very beginning to his placement at the very end is prepared to welcome back his Lord. There's a truth captured in this. It can be confused at times, but it's the truth. Form matters. External form affects our understanding. Here's an example of what I mean. When I arrived here, I was told that the sink back in the sacristy was a sacrarium. A sacrarium is a specific type of sink in which you can pour any remnant of the precious blood down if something has happened to it, or if a host has been dissolved after an accident, it can be poured down that special sink that goes directly into the ground so that the sanctity of what it is safeguarded. When I was told that, I looked at the sink and I thought, well, to me it looks like a kitchen sink, bigger area with a narrow area that looked like a garbage disposal. So I said, until I know, we're not going to use it as a sacrarium. Well, when we ended up with that flood and the plumbers here, I asked them to trace a line, and this is a little scandalous, but it was not plumbed as a sacrarium, which would be consistent with how it looked. So we plumbed it correctly and put a sacrarium, a sink that looks like a sacrarium in there. Now, here's the example that I want to get to. I was sharing this with a family from the parish. It's been many months ago, and their son, who's now college age, said, Father, when I was going through religious ed, they gave us a tour and they told us that was a sacrarium. And then he said, shortly afterwards, I spent the night at a friend's house, and lo and behold, I looked and I saw that their sink was just like the sacrarium. And I said, wow, you guys have a sacrarium in your home. Form matters. It affects our understanding. We're not at a place where I believe, by and large, our community can continue this way. But keep in mind the truth of what we are doing. Pray, brethren, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father. To whom are you offering your sacrifice? Not to me. I'm not offering mine to yours. Pray, brethren, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God the Almighty Father. It's the invitation to offer up all those spiritual sacrifices you've made throughout the week, which are then joined or collected to that one sacrifice that makes the only difference that matters. And this is carried through in different parts of the Mass. For example, the very beginning prayer is technically called the collect. The priest says, let us pray. That's a real invitation to pray. What do I desire? What do I need? Lord, what do I hope for? And then, since we act not only as individuals, but as one, the priest collects all those prayers and offers that collect on behalf of all of us so that we might be in unity. Friends, look at good mothers. Rejoice in good mothers. They are the image, as they offer their lives, their spiritual sacrifices, of what we are about here, offering up, being invited to offer up, like the bread and the wine, our very self for the nourishment of the world. As we look at the one who said, when you see me, you see the Father. Let's look to him and offer not little things, but our very lives.